let me find.
All right, so you might think that most couples have the big, important relationship conversations before they say their vows. But believe it or not, folks, Dolly, many are so starry-eyed that they forget to ask the right questions before taking the plunge in the deep end. Why is the end deep, though? Senior Associate Counselor at Family Life Ministries, Sonia Winter, she looks at some questions suggested by brides.com. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Everyone. And thank you. Same to you both.
Good to see you.
But that opening a while ago sound like you're getting into the deepest.
If you cannot swim,
Yeah.
stay out of the water.
and darkest night in life. But it's not that dramatic, is it, or is it?
It's an endeavor, I like to say, which, depending on how you navigate it, can be one of the most rewarding experiences of your life.
Yeah.
You know, but I can't sit with you and talk about getting married without making a big plug for premarital counseling,
Yeah.
right? To the extent that you're prepared for it, to the extent you're prepared for the pitfalls and for the smooth road as well as the bumpy roads, I think you have a good chance at improving what you take and what you experience in
We have
marriage.
some headlines here, but before we go there, how soon or how long before you get married you should start counseling?
I think as long as you endeavor to get counseling before you get married, okay, so that you go through counseling.
So
certainly at Family Life Ministries
soon
is
as you
about
propose?
yeah, well, for sure. Counseling at Family Life Ministries is about 10 sessions. So you
Okay.
should try to make sure that you at least complete those 10 sessions before the big day.
Yep. So one of the questions, what are your financial goals and how can we try to reach them?
That's a very important question because they always say that money conversations are the most difficult for two people. And they're difficult for two reasons. Number one, what money means to people is different. So what money might mean to Simone is that it represents security. She's working today so that she can feel safe in her future. And it has that meaning to her because of her history. Right?
Right.
Whereas for Neville, money might mean to you an opportunity to live a quality of life now that maybe you never had before. So that's two very different
but
approaches to money.
The fact that I would want to get married to her, the fact that I propose to her, would I not know where she is and she
You'd be
know where I
surprised.
am?
You ought to know, but it can be a delicate conversation because what often happens is that once two people disagree on such a fundamental thing as money, it's a
problem.
difficult conversation
And
to
isn't
have.
it true, Miss Sonia, that right now that is probably the number one reason that most marriages break up is financial?
It's differences in the
Issues.
conversation. So I think that we have a different approach to money in and of itself is not the problem. It's our inability to negotiate that difference with each other.
Correct. Okay.
What's the next
So
one?
we're looking at how can I help when you're stressed. Very important.
Of course.
Yeah.
But what I always say to couples, is when you're living with somebody full time, it's almost like because they're different to you, they hold up a mirror to you. And so sometimes you don't even know how you're going to deal with this intimate other when you're stressed until you're in the situation, And so hopefully that's a question that you would have been able to answer through experience of being with this
And
person.
does it matter the reason I'm stressed?
It sure does, of course, Neville. The thing what in premarital counseling again, we try to help couples to have conversations about stressors outside of the relationship and stressors that are created within the relationship.
And I think the question also could be, how can I help not to stress you? But that's another thing. It's true. Is it not true, Miss Vito? Talking truth.
Next one.
Do you want children?
Oh, that's
What
a
would you
big
do
one.
if we struggle to get pregnant?
That's a big
Because
one.
a lot of people don't find out they can't have kids until after the ring is on.
That's
And then
exactly
what?
true. That's exactly true. And then that's when they realize it's, when you want something and you can't have it is when almost like you want it several factors more than when you first started out, And sometimes a couple may be able to pursue other ways of having children, such as in vitro or not. You know, that's
Yeah.
an expensive undertaking, and that's a conversation you want to have before. Are we willing to do that? It's a very emotionally draining experience, extremely draining.
Surrogacy, are you willing to do that?
Are you willing
adoption,
to do that?
are you willing to do
How do you feel about adoption? People have very strong views about adoption, you know.
This
and
one-
so that is an important
Yeah.
conversation.
The next one, I'm not rushing it, but we don't have a whole lot of time. So the next one, I could see myself having difficulty with this one. What's your communication style? I don't think I'm the easiest guy to, on certain matters,
What
to
I would ask you,
communicate with.
Neville, is there are two important arenas in which you have to learn to communicate. And it's how do you communicate when things are going well? In other words, when we're connected and we're linked, do I communicate to you regularly any affirmations, how I feel about this relationship, or do I kind of expect you to know all the time and so we're silent? You know, am I comfortable sharing with you how I feel about you and how I feel about our life together? Because that's an important thing to do when things are going great, because it's almost like fuel in the car that prepares you for the bumpy road. So that's number one. Number two, how do you communicate when you hit the bumpy road? How do you communicate when you're stressed? How do I communicate when I'm angry at you? You know, do I attack you or do I withdraw completely?
That's
you
me.
know, you withdraw?
Completely.
That's called stonewalling.
I don't talk at all when I
That's
get
called
them.
stonewalling.
Gosh,
And
how come I
it's
don't get that treatment
destructive.
from you? Come on.
All right, I'll work it out, honey. What's the next
Yes,
one?
I'd love to give you the opportunity to work through that, Neville, because there are ways to handle that.
She's offering you counseling.
Yeah. Well,
I'm offering you tools.
Yeah, me are 66 though. I don't think we can change that much so quickly.
What are your deal breakers? Everybody has them.
For sure.
What is
Yeah.
a deal breaker?
Some things that you just absolutely will not tolerate.
Yeah.
Will no way, no how, no.
Like we mash up everything.
Yeah.
I find that in Jamaica, for a lot of couples, that has a lot to do with religion sometimes and faith. You know, and this notion of being unequally yoked is often a challenge for couples. You know, sex before marriage or not is quite often a tension. Things to do with money as well, and financial goals can be deal breakers as well. You know,
Okay.
things like that I find often happen.
How much alone time do you need? Yes, we're married, but people need space, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
if
Again-
you ask your partner for space, your partner shouldn't feel.
Yeah, but that's
Slightly.
almost like a comfort that develops over time. You know, the more you watch me in action, the more I'm comfortable telling you how I feel in certain situations. Then that's how we learn.
But that's the key,
You know,
though. You
it's
said
almost learning
over
through
time. Because if we
experience.
married to our money and by Tuesday, I want space. There's something,
There you know.
something not right with that. It's, as you say, stop. You're going to say something
I think a lot
stuff.
of these questions are better proven through us being around each other and understanding each other. Because I always say, living with somebody in that kind of intimate space is like them holding up a mirror. A lot of things you didn't know about yourself, you come to discover
Not it's
through
one
this
thing when you're
relationship.
dating, but when you get into that space together and start to learn more things about each other.
What's your biggest fear?
That's an intimate conversation. One of the things in premarital counseling that I always encourage couples to do is have an emotional conversation. And by that I mean explain to each other what your emotional landscape looks like. What are your fears? What are your dreams? What are your hopes?
Biggest fear in what sense? That she going to leave me or something?
Yeah,
That
I
kind of
remember
fear?
in my premarital, that's what my husband came up with. I was quite shocked, like, where did that come from? You know, and that has to do with his own history.
Yeah,
You know,
everybody's colored by what you went through.
absolutely. You know, we're product of our
That's deep.
circumstances.
Yeah.
I recently came across a gentleman. His biggest fear was not being able to support his family financially, and what that would do to him and his own vision of
Yes,
himself.
sense of
His own,
manhood.
absolutely,
Wow.
and that was a huge fear for him. That,
Never would have
and then the
probably
thing
just
about
said
fears,
Lisa.
you know, the thing about fears is that it influences your behavior, even when the threat does not exist.
Yeah.
And
That's the thing
sometimes you
about
don't know.
fears.
So
Yeah.
talking
My
about it is
biggest
good.
fear is that she just going to chat me to death about that. So, thank you so much for coming.
It was my pleasure. Thanks
Have
for
a
the chance.
Brilliant year. You can come back and counselor when she start chat to death. Senior Associate Counselor with Family Life Ministries, Sonia Winter. We shall be right back.
By
guys.
yourself.